Heart, hard work, action. And we're live. We're back here with John. Glad you could be here today, John.
It's great to be here, Rob.
Pumped. So this is a coffee chat, but of all things, I didn't have my coffee today because I was running. So I'm going to take my moment to pause and reflect and just to throw that in there and take a sip. But what are you drinking today?
Well, I had my coffee early this morning. Now that it's noon my time, I'm drinking my Mountain Valley spring water. But this morning, I definitely kicked my day off with my favorite coffee, which is high octane bulletproof coffee with the actual suggested grass-fed butter and MCT oil. So I go all out for my coffee in the morning. But since it's noon my time, I've cut that off, and I'm now just sipping on some spring water.
Nice. Well, that's one of the best things that I love about the podcast is it gives us the ability to spread these conversations to people, whether they're having their morning coffee, driving to work, coming home, about to go to the gym, whatever it might be. It's a chance to learn from someone and learn from someone like yourself. So before I get to introduce you, I really want to know, the first question that we always ask is, how do you want to be witnessed? And it's because we really want to strive to bridge the gap between how others see us and how we, see ourselves and how we display ourselves. So to empower our guests and listeners, we'd love to hear, how do you want to be witnessed, John?
Yeah, that's a great question. I was glad that you asked me that question prior to the podcast so I could reflect on it and really put some thought into it. So I'm just going to go ahead and read what I wrote. I strive to be a purpose-driven servant leader with unwavering integrity, empathy, humility, resilience, positive energy, a growth mindset, and a tenacious work ethic, who brings the light and drives back the darkness in my family, my work, and my community.
Right on. And if I had a coffee, I'd be taking a sip right now. Those are so many values that so many of us can relate to in the way that we do wish that we can come across and that we could be witnessed and seen from that third person point of view. John Binkley is the president and founder of CRG Search. He has over 20 years of executive search experience, has been ranked a top 1% recruiter for over 15 years, and currently leads a team that has filled over 4,000 executive searches. John holds a BS in organizational communication and MA in theology, and will begin his PhD in leadership this fall. John has been married for 24 years, has 4 children, and is a foster parent. Some of his philanthropic endeavors include foster care, the Wounded Warrior Project, Compassion International, Habitat for Humanity, and Samaritan's Purse, just to name a few. John enjoys time with family, working out, trail runs, reading philosophy and theology, prayer, as well as the great outdoors. What an introduction. I'm glad that I get to give that to you. John, I believe we have something to learn from everyone, and I think that listeners have a massive amount to learn from you throughout this coffee chat.
I'm humbled and honored. It's great to be here, Rob.
Sweet.
Really looking forward to it.
So now we're going to throw you in a hot seat. We're going to get to know you more as a person. We're going to ask you some fun questions. These I like to use as the foundation of relationship building, as questions are. So personal is the foundation for professional. John, You ready?
Let's do it, man.
Okay, 2 minutes in the hot seat. And what is your favorite quote?
Luke 2:52. It's a reference from the Second Testament in the Bible, and it says that Jesus increased in wisdom and stature and favor with God and in favor with man. I think regardless where one's at in their journey, spiritually or otherwise, we can all agree that he was absolutely an optimal human being. And I believe that passage captures why.
What is a food that you never get tired of?
Grass-fed steak.
What is your pet peeve?
Gossip.
What's a song that empowers you?
Boom by POD. I'm dating myself a bit. I'm not sure if you even know what that song is.
I gotta be honest, I'm not exactly sure which one that is. Would you rather have chunky or smooth peanut butter?
Smooth.
Oof, that's gonna be okay. We won't hold that against you. Regular or sweet potatoes?
Sweet.
All right, you earned it back. Dog or cat person?
Both.
Okay, that's kind of a cheating answer, but what's your life mantra?
Life mantra, bring the light.
Bring the light. If you're stuck on an island, what book would you bring?
The Bible.
That's not bad. Would you rather be on a mountain, beach, or jungle vacation?
Mountain.
Okay. And if you had to sing one karaoke song to save your life, what would it be?
Probably U240. Again, dating myself.
Okay. Would you sing it for us right now?
Probably not.
I didn't think so. What's your real life superpower?
Compartmentalization,
Nice. And what is a fake superpower that you wish you had?
the ability to fly.
All right. We've had a couple flies on here. We've had a few
Yeah, man.
reports. Not bad. So moving out of the hot seat, John, like I said, we have a ton to learn from you on this show. We laugh, we learn, we look back as we get into levels of connection and reflection. So I really want to hear from you those top 3 lessons. Like we're all in this pursuit. We have so much to learn from your leadership. What are the top 3 things that have made a difference for you or really changed the way you think and had a vivid impact on your career?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So first, apply extreme ownership
Mm,
and self-discipline to your personal finances immediately. Don't wait. And I speak from experience. Really, these 3 examples I'm going to share are learning from my mistakes. So I did not take that advice, Rob. That when it was offered to me, I was fresh out of college. I was ready to take on the world. I was provided fantastic wealth management and personal finance advice from a mentor. And because I was 21, I felt like I had plenty of time to work on that. And I'll get to it when it becomes important as I get older in life. So I, in turn, followed the path of most Americans, barely saving, accumulating debt, living paycheck to paycheck. And it worked because I was a high income earner, making more year over year. And then it happened. The Great Recession of 2008, 2009. And my income was reduced by 70%.
Ooh.
Yeah, 70%. And I was not ready. I had a little bit of money in savings, but I was not ready for a 70% reduction in income, particularly since I had a family to provide for. Had a mortgage, had a stay-at-home mom, had 2 children, 2 foster children, a cat and a dog, back to why I like them both. And I had to, in order to provide for my family, in order to bridge the gap somewhat, not completely, during that period of about 2 years, I had to go find multiple jobs. I actually had 3 to 4 jobs at any given time during that period. And I still wasn't able to bridge the 70%, but I was able to make enough to provide for my family during those lean times. So here's the takeaway. Again, as I said, apply extreme ownership and self-discipline to your personal finances immediately. I believe one real practical application would be to follow Dave Ramsey's baby steps. Are you familiar with Dave Ramsey, Rob?
I believe I am, and I think I have them here in our notes, and I'm gonna reflect on them if that's cool. And
Yeah,
because this is so great. And I love that you made it actionable, and I love that you brought in extreme ownership to finances. I think we gotta have extreme ownership. We got Jocko Willink, put that in everything, right? So that would be my first sip. If you're riding along, take a sip and reflect on how you're going to make this actionable. But I mean, step 1, save $1,000 in an emergency fund. Step 2, pay off all debt. Step 3, save 3 to 6 months of expenses in an emergency fund. Step 4, invest 15% of your household income for retirement. Step 5, save for your children's college fund. Step 6, pay off your home early. Step 7, build wealth and give. And I'm going to include those in the notes so that they can come back and if they're driving, they don't stop to read them right now. You can look at them and at your own pace later on, but those are great. And I love that you've made finances so actionable and you've brought that into this conversation, which we're always focused on action and how do we not just talk about it, but then go do.
Yeah, and I'm so glad that you walk through those 7 steps. Again, these are not steps that were necessarily created by Dave. These steps can be found via most, I would say, reputable financial planners. What's interesting about Dave Ramsey is he's figured out a way to kind of package personal finance in an engaging way. He's a best-selling author. He's got a great podcast. But what's great about him is his story. He took a different path, and in his 20s, and I know that's one of the targets here of this podcast, he actually pursued his dream and became a millionaire.
Mm.
He ended up having, I believe, a net worth of $1 million. He secured $4 million, but had $3 million in debt. And then what happened was there was a change in the administration and a change in financial laws. And he very quickly went from having $4 million and $3 million in debt to having $3 million in debt.
Oof.
Because the bank called the note home. Imagine that.
Right.
And so he was significantly in debt. And so as a result, he needed to develop a plan and a strategy to get out of debt and provide for his family in a more effective manner. Fast forward 25 years later, his net worth is now 200 million and he's debt free.
Mm-hmm.
So he's got street cred.
Yeah.
And he's got 2 great books that I'd recommend. I think we're going to put those in the podcast notes at the end.
Yeah.
One is the Total Money Makeover. That's just kind of the how-to, how to accomplish similar, kind of similar wealth building and family management. And there's another one that I just read. It's his newest book called Baby Step Millionaires.
Wow.
And that's actually the path to becoming a millionaire and continuing to build on that.
Right. Wow. And you just alluded to your third takeaway. Technically, you had 3,
Right.
but I can already tell that this is going to be a multiple podcast. We've got so much bounty of overflowing information. We're going to have to welcome you back. For this coffee chat, you started to talk about only taking advice from people with street cred. And it's going to be a little bit of a fun teaser. We're going to save that second reflection. So, but can you tell us a little bit more about the only taking advice from people with street cred, what that's meant to you?
Yeah, absolutely. During the first 10 years of my professional life, I was inundated with well-meaning self-appointed mentors who wanted to offer me unsolicited advice on everything from investing to personal finance, to marriage, to parenting, to career choices, to fitness, you name it. I'm sure you are experiencing that right now, Rob, as are your listeners. And actually, it doesn't stop. I'm 50.
Well, why is anyone listening to me? But I think this is so aligned because there's no, like me, I'm just here trying to listen to learn from people with street cred. And I wanted to make it possible to share that learning experience because it's not easy to just ask the questions. It's not easy to get access to the mentors. We wish we had more time. We wish we had more resources. We wish you could just sit around and read books. I mean, we have limited time. So how can I share my mind trying to learn from you and make it accessible? Because we have so much to learn from these people.
Well, and that's the whole part of, that's really the philosophy of your podcast, which is why when you reached out to me, I was honored and humbled and excited to participate because you're doing it. You're trying to bring folks in with street cred that can provide some life application, some life coaching, if you will, along the way. But yeah, so the takeaway is really, I share this with my kids as well. We're always going to be offered unsolicited advice. That's just life.
Sure.
And the takeaway here, Rob, is we just need to pause and we need to look at that person's life and ask ourselves the question, has that person earned the right to speak that truth into my life? Mm-hmm. Do they have street cred? We can't separate the message from the messenger, in other words.
Right.
So if somebody's giving us personal financial advice, we need to look at their personal financial wealth and health, if you will. And if their financial house is a disaster, that's not somebody that would be a good resource for us. If somebody is providing fitness advice, we need to look at their life. Are they living their life optimally? Physically, if you will, and what they're putting in their body and how they're training their body and so forth. So that was absolutely one of the life lessons that I've learned that I think would be very helpful is to only take advice from folks with street cred.
Right. I mean, on this, something my dad always used to say is listen to everyone, but then you got to make the decision. So I think that's well super aligned. It's like, you have something, you can listen. You don't lose anything from listening except maybe time, right? So you have the opportunity to listen to someone with great expertise and great street cred like yourself. Let's take it and then go make the decisions that are best for you. But be careful before you run wildly with anything that anyone tells you, especially on this podcast. even though you're giving this great advice, it may not be right for you. You might have to find the way you
Absolutely.
have to activate it for yourself. And to
Absolutely.
activate it for yourself talks about that second most important takeaway for you when you talk about finding professional
Yes.
self-actualization. So
Yeah.
how do you do that if you're taking
Yeah, man.
from everyone else?
Oh, this is such an important one. This kind of falls in the lane of what I do professionally. Yeah. The second point here, the second life lesson is to passionately pursue professional self-actualization. And there's a lot that can be said about this, but for the sake of brevity, I'd like to recommend another book.
You got it.
It's a book called What Color's Your Parachute by Richard Nelson Bowles. It has been in print since 1970, been revised annually since 1975. It is the world's most popular job hunting guide intended for job seekers. Rob, I've been recommending this book for over 22 years to everyone from an entry-level engineer to a CEO, and I receive the same feedback each and every time. Thank you. Life-changing. And a couple accolades about the book. It was the U.S. Department of Labor chose the book as one of the number one books that shaped the world since 1758.
Whoa. I'm just, this whole time, if I had a coffee, I would just thinking like, I got to go read this book.
Time Magazine 100 all-time best books since 1923. And he's been attributed with founding the modern career counseling movement. And let me first say that I don't get any type of royalties on any of these suggestions I'm making, but this is one that I've actually personally read multiple times. I recommend it almost daily in my line of work. And ultimately, the book is designed to help us identify how we've been uniquely created, how we are uniquely designed, and how to find a career that will ultimately optimize that, capitalize on that, and create fulfillment and joy in our profession, which in turn will set us up to succeed because we're going to love doing what we're doing.
That's awesome. I'm really glad that you brought it in, and it's perfect the way that you introduced it as a resource for furthering this conversation, because we realized that this podcast, we don't have time to just talk for the 6 hours that, people are like, wow, this guy could really talk. Like I could sit here and go off with you about this. But to hear about how this book has meant to you, the pitch you gave to it, you've already given us a bunch of results and statistics. It's almost like you got the head start on the star story that we're going to transition to in a second. But just to think about how we can have access to these resources moving forward. And a lot of people talk about self-actualization, and it can kind of sound like bullshit, right? It can,
right, sure.
It's like what, and the reason for that is if you can't get towards that area, right? We have Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Yes.
And up at the top is self-actualization. If you're not near that, then you're only able to focus on where you are, and you can't see the connection with what I like to do is take Maslow's pyramid, flip it upside down, and think about levels of depth in your action. And you think about what you get directly, you get indirectly, others get directly, and what others get indirectly. And in this framework, I explain it on a couple different episodes, but through looking at it this way, it allows me to have the intentionality in my actions to say, when I'm doing this, it's not just self-actualization, to see how it's all deeply rooted in our evolution, in our psychology, in the way that we've come together as social creatures, to say, when I am operating in this space, I'm cultivating something better for everyone and fulfilling everything that comes before that. It's not easy to do until you have those prior needs fulfilled. But I can imagine, I haven't read this book yet, but I'm going to run out and go grab it after this. And now I want to transition to a star story, which you got a head start on before, because you started telling an awesome story filled with details, filled with results, filled with quantifiable metrics, all things that you want to tell and want to pull out in the story. But for our listeners that don't realize that, but can reflect on it and be more conscious of it, in business interviews and in communication in general, candidates are asked and expected to present 2-minute star stories, especially news, right? Situation, task, action, results. And this makes it clear and relevant, and the core information is accessible. Now, on this show, John, obviously you're an expert. Normally, folks have never told the story before. They haven't had to do it in 20 years. So it's going to be cool because we have a lot to learn from you. The story that I wanted you to tell so that our listeners can witness and emulate how someone with phenomenal leadership experience would do it and then we can reflect and strengthen it together. The story I'd like you to tell us is to tell us a little bit more about an experience when you had to manage up with a difficult boss.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great question. The Harvard Business Review published a great article entitled "Managing Your Boss" years ago. That has become a classic. We should put that also in the podcast notes. It's a must-read for all professionals. But here's an example from my own life. So I started in the recruiting business 21 years ago. I joined a top 10 recruiting firm for the second largest recruiting firm in the world. The managing partner of that particular branch that I worked for was an absolute legend in the recruiting business and had been a thought leader in the industry for over 20 years. And he still personally trained all new hires.
Wow.
Remarkable. And he trained me to sell our services and find candidates in a way that had been successful for over 30 years in the business and certainly 20 years for his firm. However, there was a challenge that I was presented. The way that I was being told to sell our services and find candidates, I felt was unethical. We'll call it in the terms of kind of business ethics.
Mm-hmm.
And listen, in his defense, at the time, that was the established method of all leading search firms. It was just how it was done. So I had a dilemma. And what I chose to do, it's a life lesson that we can maybe add to number 4, but when presented a dilemma, you don't complain about it, you find a solution, and then you present that solution as a strategy to manage the dilemma or to solve the problem, if you will.
Right.
So I did just that. I chose to develop an alternative approach to selling our services and finding candidates that was ethical. And I asked for permission to use that approach. And I had to manage up. I had to really sell this idea and sell that it would work.
Mm-hmm.
And there'd be a fantastic ROI on the back end. And he pondered it, reflected on it, challenged. I was resolved and resilient. And then he ultimately agreed to allow me to try this method. He said, however, if I didn't make my quota in 90 days, I'd be fired. So it better work. And that was the test, Rob. You know, I had a family at home to provide for, and the pressure was real. 90 days later, I set a record, filled 9 searches in 90 days, went on to be Rookie of the Year, #1 recruiter in the firm, #1 in the region, top 10 out of 5,000 worldwide. And I was outperforming the other recruiters in the practice 4-fold. Consequently, the managing partner asked me to coach the entire firm on converting to this new method of sales and recruiting that I developed. And as a result, once everybody started adopting this particular method, we experienced explosive growth, became known as a recruiting firm with unwavering integrity, and conversely, secured more business as a result.
Like if I was drinking a coffee right now, I would just chug it. Like I gotta talk to my amazing podcast team and figure out how we put like the rockin' sound effects and just like, John, how'd you feel about telling that story, the delivery?
Yeah, no, I listen, I think the STAR method's a great method because it's back to what we mentioned earlier. You know, one of the questions that you had asked me early on that we didn't touch on is, you know, what are the top skills that people in my profession, recruiters, are looking for?
Yeah.
And those are character, leadership, cultural fit, professional chemistry, relevant experience, and relevant education. A STAR story provides you an opportunity to demonstrate those 6 core things that we are looking for,
right,
in first-round draft picks and an ideal candidates.
Absolutely. I think you did a stellar job of delivering that, especially with your energy and your passion and the enthusiasm, which is energy and the purpose. You used quantifiable metrics. It makes it really tangible to view those results at the end. You talked about the action. You really laid on the pressure throughout, which the pressure. So the thing that this was always my conflict with the STAR format is it teaches you like, this is exactly what you need to put into it. but it doesn't make it a good story,
Right.
because a good story follows a storyline. And so
Yep.
you talked about the pressure, not even just in the beginning, but at the end too. And you set the context, like I had 90 days to prove that this worked. I really like you staged the situation of how this made you uncomfortable. And this was an important conflict and you had to make this decision. It's very real. And then you talked about the action, of course, on this, love the action and that you were focused on the solution, but not just that you had an idea and that it worked, but that you had to deliver it. Talk about ROI, talk about it in terms of the communication on the level that your leader is focused on. He clearly doesn't care if this was the running thing of the time. You had to put it in terms and communicate to him in what he was trying to communicate with, dollars and cents. If
Right.
it don't make dollars, don't make sense.
Yeah.
Um, so
Well said.
just
Yeah.
really, really well articulated. And then I love that you talked about those results at the end, filling 9 searches in 90 days, number 1 in the firm, number 1 in the region, top 10 and out of 5,000 recruiters, rookie of the year. Like, shout out to you. And then just to tie it all together, like I really liked that you talked about like the consequences and the moving forward. And you didn't say this explicitly, and I didn't tell you to, but you can tell me if you think this or not. I really like when someone finishes their story and then they reflect and strengthen on it, and they talk about how this has set the tone for everything that they do in their leadership moving forward. You said that all throughout your story. I just think for our listeners to keep in mind too, that's something that you can do. Talk about how you took this as a story and
Yep.
it's set the tone for your leadership moving forward.
Well said. Agreed.
It's okay, coming from the founder and CEO, the expert. So just outstanding story, John. Truly, we have learned so much from you in this short amount of time. I think we're almost out of coffee over here in my imaginary cup. But before we leave, I'd like one question for reflection that you'd like to pose to our LinkedIn Heart and Hard Worker community.
Yeah, the question that I would pose is just how can I help you? So I absolutely attribute the success that I've had in my life, both personally and professionally, to mentors that have come alongside me and continue to come alongside me. We need to be lifelong learners, and we need to approach life as servant leaders with coachability and consistent humility. So I would just ask, how can I help you? Please, we'll include my contact information at the end of this podcast. Right. Email me, message me on LinkedIn. That's how Rob and I ultimately connected. That was Rob's approach. Just let me know how I can help you. And that is my favorite thing to do, is to help others. So let me know how I can help you. I'd be glad to come alongside and
I love that.
Join you in this journey of life and maybe share some experience, share along the way.
I love that. And then our LinkedIn Heart and Hard Worker community can think, how can they help someone else, and reflect on that.
Awesome.
Like you
Love
said,
it.
that's exactly how we have connected. That's been the foundation of my professional development, is just thinking I'm going to help people until this becomes a skill. And then I become a master at helping people. And just the learning that I've done through that process is leading by helping, being a giver. And it's evident by the amount of resources that you've provided throughout this podcast already. And when I asked you ahead of time, can you provide us with at least one helpful resource? You gave me 6 books, 2 podcasts, and 2 links, one to your website, one to your LinkedIn. So it's very obvious how much helping others has become a part of you, and how much you're leaning into that actualization, in that level of depth. So we're going to include those books, everything we talked about. John, it's been a pleasure to get to put you into the hot seat and laugh with you. It's been so rewarding to learn with you, your top takeaways, managing finances, the third one that we jumped to instead of the second one, but from managing finances to actually paying attention to street cred, and then really working towards that actualization in that level. And like you said, you summed it up in your story about dealing and managing with a difficult boss. And finally, the question that you posed, how can I help you in this conversation in life beyond this? This conversation is going to spread well beyond the fixed walls and to every listener. So John, thanks for giving us the opportunity to learn with and from you.
Rob, it's been my pleasure. Had a lot of fun.